What's going on, guys? Had to try that one more time, but welcome to the Ivan Herrera Show. We have a lot going on in this episode. I'm going to be going over some of the newest NFL news. We have the Eagles hiring a new offensive coordinator. What will the Bengals do with the different things that they have to do with among their players, whether it's T. Higgins, players on their defense, and then the Saints have found their new offensive coordinator as well. And I'm going to also go over a few lessons that I learned from this past season in fantasy football and what we can do to apply them in 2025. But first, let's begin over in Philadelphia. That's why this video was first coined as the Eagles hire their new OC. And they have found Kevin Patullo. He is the current, or he was the quarterback's coach for the Philadelphia Eagles under Nick Sirianni. But now he is going to be calling plays for Jalen Hurts, and this is going to be the sixth different play caller that Jalen Hurts has had since entering the league, which is crazy to think about because, I mean, all you want from your quarterback to experience is just continuity. And unfortunately for Jalen Hurts, that's not been the case for him. So with that, though, we see that this OC is going to be inheriting a fantastic offense. For the most part, this team is going to stay reunited. They're going to have a lot of their pieces back again. And what I hope, because Jalen has shown that he can win with multiple play callers. I mean, he went to the Super Bowl 2 years prior to this one with Steichen, and we saw what happened with Brian Johnson last year, which unfortunately didn't work out. But we saw what Kellen Moore was able to do and how Kellen Moore made adjustments to the offense by really focusing heavily on Saquon Barkley. And I believe that more can be of the same for this upcoming season for Philadelphia. So I personally like the hire, considering that he's been with Sirianni since the beginning, since his days back in Indianapolis. And A.J. Brown also spoke highly of the hire as well, saying that he loves what could evolve from this offense because of this hire. He shared that recently in a podcast. So slam dunk hire, I think, for me, just because you want that kind of continuity within a coaching staff, and considering that there were so many ups and downs that this team has experienced, Philadelphia has over the past couple seasons. So them having that stability will go a long way for them as well. In other news as well, we see that the Saints have also hired their new offensive coordinator. Doug Nussmeier is going to be the new OC. And if you're not familiar with him, he's actually been attached to Kellen Moore for quite some time now. He was the quarterback coach when Kellen Moore was the offensive coordinator in Dallas. He was also the quarterback coach when Kellen Moore was in Los Angeles with the Chargers. And he was this past coach as well for the quarterbacks when he was in Philadelphia, when Kellen Moore was the OC. And now he's making the move also to New Orleans. And for him, it's also a comeback party as well for him, because he was drafted by the Saints when he was an NFL quarterback back in his day. So a lot of familiarity, a lot of roots already there with New Orleans, and he is going back, but this time as the new offensive coordinator for an offense that we know that needs some revitalization, for an organization that has a lot of salary cap issues that they're going to have to address. So very intriguing stuff in New Orleans, and Nussmeier is going to be now the play caller there for the Saints. And some other news as well in Cincinnati. The murmurs around Cincinnati is that T. Higgins is most likely going to be franchise tagged. The team hasn't made that official announcement just yet. But regardless, though, maintaining T. Higgins as part of this offense is critical. I mean, we've heard Joe Burrow time and time again talk about how important it is for them to bring him back for another season. Well, not just for another season, but just to keep T. Higgins. And you can't blame him. Look at the stats over here. T. Higgins coming off of a season where he had 911 receiving yards, 73 receptions, 109 targets, and had a career-high 10 touchdowns. In fantasy, because that's what we're here for, finished as the wide receiver 15 in total points among wide receivers. And that's good for wide receiver 5 on a points per game basis, averaging 18.5 points. And I cannot speak enough about how effective his closeout for the season was. He had monster averages. His last 3 games, which is a very critical time for us fantasy managers that are in the playoffs, T. Higgins averaged 26.9 points in PPR formats. He also had a 41-point performance in that Final Fantasy week 17. So, I mean, the Bengals have a lot of important decisions to make. Obviously, with T. Higgins, now you also have to worry about Jamar Chase. A lot of talks about that contract situation. And on the defense, Trey Hendrickson, and it's a defense that needs a lot of attention this offseason. So a lot of important decisions there in Cincinnati. And it's going to be very intriguing to see how that plays out. So the root of this video, though, what I did want to go over is the 2024 fantasy football lessons that I have learned that I want to apply going into 2025. And the first one, because I have 4, is going to be that tight ends, drafting early tight ends, are not worth the return. And I'll explain why. The first one is going to be, just look at these ADPs. So you're seeing here, Travis Kelce, Sam Laporta, Mark Andrews, and so on. These were your top tight ends that were drafted in fantasy last year. Take a really good look at this. Because the next thing you're going to see right now is going to be the actual finishes. And what's intriguing, what's really, really interesting here, is that 5 of the top 12 tight ends weren't drafted in top 12 in ADP. So you're seeing Jonnu Smith. This is someone that went undrafted. Zach Ertz, undrafted. Tucker Kraft, undrafted. Hunter Henry, not within the top 12. He was drafted, but not as a top 12 option at all at the tight end position. And I get it. Tight ends are a very shallow position. But for example, in the case of Jonnu Smith, you can see here, very slow start. But fantasy is all about making adjustments, being active on the waiver wire, being very aware of, okay, what's going on with the team? Where are they focusing their offense on? Considering that Tua Tagovailoa didn't have a great year and Tyreek Hill wasn't as explosive. But we saw Jonnu Smith. He was great, despite Waddle and Tyreek Hill being really underperforming all year long. Zach Ertz, same thing. I know that the Commanders drafted Ben Sinnott. There was talks about how would he fit in this offense. But come to find out, Jaden Daniels loved having a veteran tight end that he can rely on, and Zach Ertz was that. Now, the next lesson that we're going to take here is that rookies in fantasy football can be hidden gems. And let me explain why. Because a lot of these guys go drafted in much later rounds. And the first one I want to share with is going to be Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers was drafted 95th overall. And he finished as a tight end 1. So this was a guy that was available maybe around 8, 9, 10 range. And absolute great return. Tight end 1 finish. Was consistent all year long. And he exploded once Devontae Adams got traded. Next one's going to be Ladd McConkey. Ladd McConkey, drafted 101st overall. Finished as wide receiver 12. Was really finding his groove in that offense with Los Angeles. And he was someone that I was saying over and over again. You check back in these old videos that I had last year. Said, hey, this is someone worth trading for. Justin Herbert was getting more and more confident with targeting Ladd McConkey, and it worked out well. Had a great end to his season. And then we see Brian Thomas Jr., one of my favorite guys in fantasy this past year. Very similar. All the injuries there in Jacksonville, the uncertainty there with the offense, but you knew that Brian Thomas was just someone that was feasting in this offense and someone that will, I think, continue to do so going into 2025. And then we saw Bucky Irving. Bucky Irving went undrafted. Will finish as the RB13. Sorry, I actually forgot to mention. With Brian Thomas, he went 118th overall, finished as the wide receiver 4. So you're seeing here the examples that we're sharing. Brock Bowers, Ladd McConkey, Brian Thomas, Bucky Irving, all of these guys within their roles were top 12 options, and they went nearly later from round 9 and beyond. Now, what I will say is that this upcoming draft class isn't one that gets you excited. There's some pretty good running backs coming out. Of course, Gentry's going to be the main one that I think could be a plug and play, but he's not really fitting into this archetype of late round rookies to target and to consider as options that could really pan out for your teams. Now, the next lesson, so we went over to the first one. Early tight ends are not worth the return most of the time. We're seeing that rookies can be late round gems. And the third point is going to be late round quarterbacks are still a very effective strategy in fantasy football. Now, of course, early round quarterbacks have their upside. When you think of Lamar Jackson, you think of Josh Allen, maybe even Jalen Hurts, guys that have really steady floors at that elite tier. But let me go over a quick list here that will show you the quarterbacks that were drafted in much later rounds. We'll go from round 7 and beyond. So we'll say round 7, round 6 range to undrafted. And here's that list. You can see here, Joe Burrow, the first one on our list, was drafted as the QB7, 71st overall in ADP, finished as the QB3. Then we see Jaden Daniels. He's the QB12, was drafted 102nd overall, finished as the QB5. Jared Goff, drafted as the QB15th, 111th overall, finished as the QB6. And then we see Baker Mayfield, drafted as the QB21, 158th overall, finished as the QB4. And then we see Bo Nix, 192nd overall, that's now undrafted range, finished as the QB7. So just adding to the point when we were talking about tight ends, about how being active on the waiver wire makes all the difference in the world. Some of you may have drafted Patrick Mahomes and didn't have a great year. But you look at these guys right here and where they were drafted, really worth note-taking, I should say, going into next season in 2025. So late round tight ends, late round quarterbacks may be the play for 2025 for better upside and better returns on your fantasy teams. Now, the last point I want to go over, this is a very basic one, but one that I think holds a lot of good ground. And that's going to be, don't ignore bad offenses. And I'm going to just pick on one specific one. That's going to be the Raiders. I'm sorry, Raiders fans, this bit's not going to be one that you're going to enjoy. But last year, I was really high on Zamir White. I thought Zamir White was someone that was going to have a great year. And a lot of it was really based on the foundation that he was going to get a lot of opportunities within that Las Vegas offense. Antonio Pierce, the head coach of the Raiders, spoke highly about the opportunities that this team wanted to give Zamir White. But unfortunately, the lack of stability at the quarterback position, plus the offense really being very stale in Las Vegas, and then you had the distractions with Devontae Adams getting traded, and then you saw Alexander Madison getting there in the mix, and I wasn't too worried about Madison, but he was enough of a distraction that really hindered Zamir White's production. But then to Zamir White's own doing as well, he wasn't really all that great with his opportunities as well. So it just wasn't really great. So next year, the lesson we can take here, so we already established early tight ends may not be the best option. Rookies are late round gems. Late round quarterback, still an effective strategy. And the fourth one, don't ignore bad offenses. And I have some data I want to share with you. So Las Vegas ranked 30th in rushing play percentage. Not going to work out really well considering that this team was also in a lot of deficits, a lot of games where they had to play catch up. And then according to Next Gen Stats, they were 22nd in run block win rate. Two good stats there that really speak to how ineffective this team was. And of course, how that really hindered Zamir White's upside in 2024. So those are the lessons that we can take from 2024, take into 2025. Now, I do want to close out the podcast on a high note, something more encouraging. So I'm a Christian, so I read the Bible quite regularly. And in my devotion as of late, I've been really challenged to go a little bit deeper in encouragement and building community. And especially in a season where our family is extremely busy. We have a crazy routine. We have two great girls that we love so much. My wife's a PhD student, so we have a very crazy schedule. She works full-time. I work full-time. I'm trying to also do this on the side. But I came across this great quote I want to share with you. And it reads from an author called Jago, and he writes, if we're isolated Christians in our day-to-day environments, whether that is the workplace or school or university or home, it is good to pray for the Lord to provide us with another brother or sister in Christ. Even their mere presence can be a source of encouragement to keep going and serving the Lord in life and in mission. As the writer of Ecclesiastes says, two are better than one. If either one of them falls down, one can help the other up. And that for me is such a great encouragement, because I'm currently reading a book by Dale Carnegie. It's How to Make Friends and Win Influence, or rather how to win friends and influence people. And there's this great quote that he shares. He says, you can make friends in 2 months by becoming interested in other people than you can in 2 years by trying to get other people interested in you. And it's crazy. This book was written in 1936, and we live in a world right now that is so connected as far as the amount of resources that we can access, the amount of information we can access as well. But we're seeing a huge opportunity in true connection. So we are connected, but we lack serious connection. And the solve for that is to change your perspective. And I shared this on my Instagram a couple of days ago about putting our focus and finding true joy. And I gave it into an acronym, and that's Jesus, others, and then yourself, where you prioritize your relationship with God, your spiritual growth, because that in turn will help you be in a right trajectory to then support others, which in turn benefits you. And I don't know too much about Dale Carnegie, but his book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, talks about the power of encouragement, the power of thinking of others. And whether or not you subscribe to the Christian faith, I think that these are principles that can help you grow as an individual. And my prayer for you is that you find that encouragement, that you find that opportunity to encourage others as well. So as we close up the podcast, I want to first thank you so much for watching, for tuning in. And if you got value, I really encourage you to hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. If you're also listening to the audio podcast, please leave a review, subscribe as well. Be sure to let me know what you think. And of course, give me any and all feedback that I can do to improve this podcast. And I'm so thankful that you've been here this entire time. For those of you that tune in and watch the playback, thank you also for watching. And as we wind down, I want to encourage you, take care. God bless. Peace. See you guys on the next one.